Why religion is dangerous. So, I used to be very religious, and when you're in religion, you never think of yourself as being wrong. You see as everyone else outside of your religion as the ones that are wrong. And I think this is the most dangerous part of it because the way that big conflicts arise is when one group of people thinks they are infallible and they think that everyone else is fallible. So the religion that I'm most well experienced with is Christianity because that's what I was raised in and that's what I believed for my whole life up until last year. And Christianity is predicated on being infallible. It's predicated by the majority of Christians. I'm aware there's some that are not as literal, but most Christians believe that the Bible is infallible and divine and inspired by God Himself, which is essentially a really complicated way of saying what we believe is right and you can't argue with us because we said that God said so. So it's so dangerous because you're basically just saying that you can't be wrong. Anything in this book can be right because it was written by God. How are you going to argue with our book? God wrote it. And it's just not helpful for building people up because Christianity is based on this constant battle being waged between good and evil, which isn't actually a thing. Like, good and evil aren't a thing outside of our heads. I don't see people as like good people and then evil people now that I'm outside of religion. Like, when I see people hurting other people, doing bad things, or unhelpful things, unproductive things, harmful things, of course I see the actions as unhelpful and unproductive, but I'm not seeing that person as evil. If anything, I look at them as a sick person. They're unhealthy because no emotionally, mentally, and physically healthy person is going to go out and hurt people. That just wouldn't happen if you're completely healthy. So I look at it as a need for rehabilitation, not a need for like correcting somebody or for proving to someone that they're wrong. Like, that's not the point. That's not how you help people. But with religion, that's what it's all about. It's about making people realize that they're wrong. It's not necessarily about helping them. It's more so about right and wrong, and then the helping them can maybe come sometime after. But it's about this being a very clear right and wrong, which there's not always a clear right and wrong in life. A lot of life is not black and white. A lot of life is nuanced. There's a lot of gray area in life, and that's why we have courts of law and we have lawyers to interpret the nuances in law and to, account for possible exceptions to the rule that will come up inevitably in the future to certain laws that are made. So it's very, very, very dangerous to say that something is right because our book says so, and you can't argue with us because God wrote the book. I mean, that's a grandiose claim. It's a very grandiose claim, and I can just see so many different ways for it to be used negatively. I mean, it has been used negatively. I mean, you can look at the Crusades, where millions of people were killed. But there's always going to be a way to say, like, I'm a Christian and you're not. You're practicing Christianity the wrong way, because the Holy Spirit told me that God said that my denomination of Christianity is the right denomination, even though that the other denominations are saying the same exact thing. So people it attracts the most unpleasant people, I think. Religion does, because it attracts people that want to be beyond being reproached and being criticized, narcissists, because they want to. You can say that God is on your side, and who's going to argue with you? You know, no one can really argue with that. But I mean, if your goal is to help other humans, then having this view of good and evil just isn't helpful. It isn't helpful. It's only helpful if you want to prove that you're right. If you want to prove that you're right and other people are wrong, then yeah, religion is for you. And religion does fill a lot of gaps for some people, because some people don't like being wrong and they want to be right really, really badly. They don't want for there to be nuances to things. They want to be very clearly right without any doubt. But that's not how life is. But there's just something very authoritarian about a religion that says that it's right and everything in it is right, because there's never been any organization, any group ever that has been 100% correct, ever. When has a political party ever been 100% correct? When has any group of people ever been 100% correct? There's no ideologies that are ever going to be 100% flawless. And I mean, I think you could say that if an ideology claimed to be flawless, then that itself would be a flaw. But yeah, it's just that religion has a very non-democratic approach to it. Like, there's no room for debate about a lot of things, you know. You can just very easily make it, oh, well, God said so. So how are you going to argue with God, you know? God said that this particular group of people is wrong. So who are you to say that it's wrong for us to go and kill them, you know? So whenever you really want to do some harmful things to other people, if you're bold enough, you can just find ways to use your own religion to justify that. And justify that by saying that, well, God said so, so it must be right, you know? So yeah, I mean, religion is just not very helpful for reconciling differences between people. Instead of reconciling differences, it wants to pretend like those differences don't exist, and it wants to have uniformity. It wants everyone to be similar, to believe the same thing. But it's just not realistic. And so the only way that you can actually get people to become a part of your religion is to kind of stomp on their differences and to try to take out the gray areas, even though gray areas and nuances are inherent in life. And you have to use fear to get people to buy into your religion, because you know, you can't have a lot of back and forth happening within religion. You can't have anybody in the audience, you know, raising their hand and asking the pastor questions. Like, there's just not room for that within religions. Like, religion naturally, like, it does not open itself up to be changed. No one can just go in and change the Bible unless they say that God told them to do so, you know. Then you can. But yeah, religion just gives like an avenue to people who kind of want to do whatever they want and are willing to use whatever means to get there. religion is a perfect way to do that, because you can say that the Holy Spirit inspired me to do something. And if the Holy Spirit is telling you that I shouldn't do this, well, you don't actually have the Holy Spirit, You're not actually a Christian, And it's so funny to step outside of religion and see, like, people in different denominations, like, bickering with each other. Like, I'll talk to people that are currently Christians about my Christian experience, and I'll tell them about how I spoke in tongues one time when I was at a friend's Pentecostal church. And that friend will tell me, oh, well, speaking in tongues, that's not something Christians do. I'd say, oh, well, no, they say that Christians do that. They say Christians do that, and they say that actually you're wrong. And then he'll say, oh, well, I actually have verses to point out that speaking in tongues is wrong. And I say, okay, well, the Pentecostals have verses to point out why speaking in tongues is right, And you can go down the line and do this with every denomination. Like, the denomination wouldn't exist if they didn't have verses to justify it, and if they didn't believe that they were right. They also believe that the Holy Spirit is telling them that they're correct. So who are you to say that they're wrong? So, when you can invoke God or the Holy Spirit, anything kind of goes. Like, you can say, oh, well, God made me do it almost. So you can kind of get rid of your responsibility for your decision making, or you can, like, kind of just not even hold yourself accountable, because you can say that you were you were just working for God, or God was working through you, But unfortunately, that is not the reality of things. Yeah, we don't have any evidence that there is a greater good or a greater evil. We don't have evidence of a God. We certainly don't have evidence of a God that's involved with his creation, if there were a God. We don't have evidence of a before life or an afterlife. But I do get worried when I see, like, very, very passionate religious people that can't stand to be criticized, Like, they literally believe that the Bible is infallible and that they can't be wrong, And they won't let anyone stop them, Because they feel like they have God on their side. They have a superiority complex. And that is the kind of people that religion will naturally attract. People that want to be right really, really badly. They don't want to be wrong. They don't want to acknowledge differing opinions, And if they do acknowledge differing opinions, they want to circle back to how, at the end of the day, Christianity or their religion is correct. But life is not about right and wrong. Life is not about, making sure that everybody is following a particular set of rules, and not offending some imaginary character in the sky. That's just, because then it becomes more about right and wrong and good and evil than about helping people. Instead of helping other people, we get caught up in asking if that person was right or wrong or not. If they were good or evil, if they were a good person or a bad person. But it's simply just not like that. It's a matter of some people being more emotionally and mentally healthy, and other people being less emotionally and mentally healthy. And so, yeah, the people that are less healthy overall are going to do more harmful things to other people. But it's just a waste of time to try to accuse them of being a bad person, an evil person, accuse them of doing wrong things. But at the end of the day, they're just not. They're a sick person. They're sick. They're not a bad person. They're sick. And accusing them of being bad is just a way of you putting yourself above them to feel better about yourself, which is what religion does. It's to help people feel better about themselves, to make them feel good about whatever assumptions and beliefs they already had. Instead of just acknowledging that, some people are sick. Some of us are less healthy than others. But you really just can't effectively help other people whenever you're more caught up in proving a point, proving that you're right first, and then you help them. No. It's just not productive. It's not productive. Yeah.